In-depth look. We'll see you soon. Well, new at 4, Governor Cuomo says you can still keep your trick-or-treating plans here in New York for now. The governor said that he has no plans of banning the annual tradition. He added that families should be able to knock on their neighbors' doors and walk freely around their neighborhoods. He says he will give some guidance as the holiday gets closer, though, but will be leaving it up to the families to decide what's best.
Natalie, we're also keeping a close eye on schools reopening. In Queens, a COVID cluster forcing big changes at a yeshiva that's already open, while public schools in the city are just 6 days away from starting in-person learning. With the clock winding down, still a lot of concern from parents and from teachers. We have team coverage this afternoon at 4 o'clock. We'll start with News 4's Andrew Siff, live with the very latest on the west side. Andrew.
And Stefan, also concerned from students. We talked to some of them today who go to MLK High School here. They have recently learned that their building will be off limits to start the season, and that is because of inadequate ventilation inside. They've been told they have to go to school somewhere else, and that's just another piece of information adding to the uncertainty.
I have 5 books, 4, a binder, and some other, I guess that's my syllabus, and a calendar.
Chantal Rodriguez and her friends got their books and folders today, but what they didn't get is their school back.
We found out where we were going today, and school starts, blended learning starts on Monday, so it's like too sudden.
What they learned is the MLK school building here on Amsterdam Avenue will remain closed this fall because the ventilation isn't adequate for COVID safety. So their choices are go downtown to an alternate site or learn from home.
I'm doing 100% online learning.
You're doing remote?
I'm doing remote 100% because I don't feel comfortable going into school.
Similar concerns at PS 209 in the Bronx, where teachers have complained for days there isn't enough airflow.
We can open the windows, but it's like used air is circulating. It's not new air coming in and out. And then our hallways don't have windows and our bathrooms don't have windows.
So Sarah Passahow and her colleagues worked outside today, continuing a series of teacher protests.
School is opening on Monday the 21st.
But Mayor de Blasio today suggested the outdoor demonstrations are familiar union tactics. And when asked about the principals' union complaint, they are thousands of teachers short for covering both in-classroom and remote learning.
I've never met a manager that didn't want a bigger budget and more personnel.
The mayor did acknowledge it's possible he'll have to add even more teachers than the 2,000 extras he promised this week.
We're going to then compare notes with the principals and the superintendents, see if that allows us to fill the gaps that exist. If there's still some gaps, we'll take another step.
Now, that school in the Bronx, PS 209, the city says they've sent engineering teams out there and they plan on fixing the ventilation by Monday. But we can also tell you that there's a school in Brooklyn. We were out there yesterday, PS 139 in Ditmas Park. They have now shut down that school for the next 24 hours as part of the new COVID protocol because they had 2 cases there, one on Friday, one on this week. They've now shut down the school while they do test and trace. They anticipated only being a 24-hour closure, but this is uncharted territory. We're live on the west side. Andrew Siff, News 4 New York.
Yes, it is indeed, Andrew. Thank you. Let's move to Queens now, where a yeshiva is working on a plan to switch to remote learning for a few days because of a cluster of COVID cases there on campus. There are more than a dozen cases at Yeshiva Dar High Torah in Far Rockaway. Now, this comes just days before the Jewish high holidays. News 4's Lynda Baquero live now in Far Rockaway with the latest for us. Linda.
And Natalie, the students are boarding buses right now as we speak at the end of a full day of classes. Although the city is recommending that this yeshiva switch to all remote learning, classes remained in person in session today. Students filed into their classrooms this morning despite a COVID scare at the school. New York City confirms 13 cases of COVID and a half dozen more possible cases at Yeshiva Dar High Torah in Far Rockaway. But the school's dean, Rabbi Bender, tells News 4 there's no replacement for in-person learning, which we've been conducting in a safe and efficient manner. However, the staff is hard at work preparing a plan to transition to virtual learning. While the school says it's sending home entire classes if there's a single student who tests positive, the majority of in-person classes continued, despite the city's proposal to switch to remote learning for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to complete a help
health investigation, given evidence of cases across multiple age levels.
The decision to remain open, at least for today, comes more than a week after the city's health commissioner warned of a higher concentration of COVID-19 cases in some neighborhoods with large Orthodox Jewish populations, including here in Far Rockaway.
And while the yeshiva works on a plan to transition to all remote learning before the high holy days begin Friday evening, they remind parents about all the safety measures they are taking, including masks, daily disinfection, daily temperature checks of students and staff, social distancing, and cohort measures to keep al-Talmidim safe.
Now I asked, but there is no word yet on whether classes will switch to remote tomorrow. That's unclear at this point, but the school does say that that's what they did all last spring and it worked well. And they do point out that they are following all guidelines to keep children as safe as possible. Reporting live in Far Rockaway, I'm Lynda Baquero, News 4 New York. Back to you.
All right, Linda, thank you so much for the latest there from Queens. Now, NYU has put one of its freshman dorms under mandatory quarantine. So far, at least 6 students living in Rubin Hall have tested positive for COVID. NYU says all of those students have been isolated. They will stay quarantined for a week. The university said a big concern is the gatherings around Washington Square Park. So they sent out a safety warning to students after that video right there from the park had surfaced.
A big update on travel restrictions. 6 states have been removed from the Tri-States travel quarantine list. Anyone arriving from California, Hawaii, Maryland, Minnesota, Nevada, or Ohio no longer has to quarantine when they get here. Puerto Rico was just added back on the list. 30 hotspot states and territories are still on there. Important to note, anyone coming from one of these hotspots to Connecticut can get tested for COVID-19 and avoid the 14-day quarantine.
You know, 3 days before you get on an airplane and fly up here, or we'll get you tested when you get to Connecticut. You got to quarantine until we get the test results. Just gives you a little bit more flexibility.
Governor Lamont says his state is working with a lab to give travelers access to those test results that come back within 48 hours.
Well, as more indoor activities resume in New York, concert venues and arenas will stay closed for now. Governor Cuomo said today that venues like Madison Square Garden are just too dangerous to reopen at this point. In an interview on Long Island News Radio, the governor said he focused on reopening the most essential businesses with the lowest risk.
The greatest risk is still the density. Even if you say, okay, every 2 seats, every 3 seats, yeah, but you're still channeling people in and out of a corridor, right? They're still coming through a gate.
Now, you might remember earlier this week, we told you how Senator Chuck Schumer had been pushing for federal funding to help keep these venues running while they're closed.
In Connecticut, not wearing a face mask or not following event size rules could soon cost you. Governor Lamont expected to sign an executive order soon. Hosting an event with more people than the state allows will cost you $500. Attending that event will come with a $250 fine. And if you're caught not wearing a mask, you'll be fined $100. Connecticut has seen a recent rise in COVID cases, and some leaders are saying this kind of move is necessary.
A mask is just like wearing a seatbelt. You do it automatically when you walk into the, sitting down in the car, or wearing a helmet when you ride a bike or a motorcycle. It's the same type of thing. I don't let hockey players out there without wearing a hockey helmet on the ice. So, same thing as wearing the mask.
Just to remind you of the current restrictions now. Indoor gatherings, they're capped at 25 people. Outdoor private gatherings are capped at 100 people. Enforcement is expected to start later this week.